What's up, guys? It's Ice here. This is going to be the start of a new series where you all are going to come with me on a journey as I create a new Pokemon game. And I'm doing this from scratch. Those of you who have seen other people make Pokemon games might be wondering where's RPG Maker or Advanced Script or whatever it's called with all the ROM hacks. This is not a ROM hack. This is not an RPG Maker game. This is a game that I'm going to code from scratch, but it's going to be a Pokemon game. So I've already started this before I decided to make this series, so I have a few things already set up, so let me just show you what I have now. So it's just going to compile there, and then it'll open the test. So as you can see, I have the dialogue system done, and it's got all that. If I press enter, it skips the text just like in the Pokemon games. There's a little arrow to show you there's more. And in this case, when you get to that, a little Pokemon appears. Now, I want to make it very clear, the graphics that you see throughout the series are not the final graphics. And in fact, they can't be the final graphics because all of these were taken from various places on the internet and they are not for other people's use. So these are all completely temporary sprites and backgrounds and graphics. I'm not an artist. So that's why, well, one of the reasons why I'm making this series is to gather up some interest. If you guys want to see this game reach completion, then I'm gonna need original art, and that includes fake Pokemon or new Pokemon, trainers, professors, backgrounds, tiles, which is like buildings and stuff. I need all that art. So I'm asking you guys, if you're an artist and you like Pokemon, or you just want to see this Pokemon game be completed, please let me know. Contact me in the comments, or through a message, or on Twitter. My username is IceMetalPunk, though I don't go on Twitter that often. Best place to contact me is in the comments below, and then I'll get back to you. But if you want to make art for this game, if you want to create creatures that will actually be catchable and you can battle with them and all that fun stuff, and they will be yours and you'll get full credit for them, then please let me know. But yeah, so hopefully this series will get you interested as the game develops more. So again, these sprites, if you see a sprite in here that you made, don't get upset. It's not going to be in the final game. I'm just using it as temporary graphics so that I can develop the game until I get real art for it later. But anyway, so you can see that I've got a system set up where, based on the dialogue, it can change the actual cutscene. And this is called Pokemon Gemini, by the way. It'll be the two paired games of Pokemon Caster and Pokemon Pollux. And yeah. So this text, ignore it. Most of it is nonsense text that I'm just using as a test to make sure everything works. Some of it is related to the story that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. Others of it is not. But anyway, so all of that, and then it's done. And in addition to the dialogue, I also have a battle menu system, or at least the display of a battle menu system done. So I can show you that by, not in the battle menu, the demo controller. This is just controlling the demo and the testing and all that. So you can see I have testing battle menu adding, which seems to work. So if I do this, it's going to add all these menu options: run, fight, swap, and item. Obviously swap could be called Pokemon. And for that I'm going to use, what did I call it? I think text Pokemon. And I store that in a constant variable, a macro. Just because of the accent mark on the E, it's hard to type. So I just put it into a macro for that. But basically, you'll see when it comes up where the dialogue is, it will instead have a nice little menu here. And it has all the options. So it's exactly like what you would expect. It wraps the text automatically to fit the smaller space. You'll see that because the text is there and there's more text to be viewed, I can't actually use the menu yet. But if we skip ahead, get to the end of his text, then you'll see now the menu is black and not gray, and there's a little indicator, and I can move around it, and I can choose an option. Right now, choosing an option doesn't do anything except tell me which option I chose. This is option 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if I choose this one, it'll say I've chosen option 2. Yep, chose option 2, and then it finishes. So obviously, there's a lot to be done. All I have is most of the, I guess the UI, if you will, but there's a lot to be done. So I think this first episode, I'm just going to kind of go through what I already have and the design that I've thought out. And then in the next episode, we'll get to adding more features. So what have I done? So we've got the battle menu, and I'm using GameMaker Pro, GameMaker Studio Pro Edition, I was looking up here, to make this. And for those of you who know much about GameMaker, you'll understand a little bit more about some of the things I had to add to make programming this a little easier. For those of you who don't worry about it. But basically, in GameMaker you have events. So like if I press the enter button, it'll run the code in the enter event. If I press up, it'll run that. Every time the screen gets redrawn, which is usually like 30 times a second, it'll run this code, and that kind of thing. When this battle menu is created, it runs this. You get the point. So for the battle menu, I have some methods in here. Oops. Nope. I have some methods in here. So GameMaker doesn't have object methods like most languages do, or at least most object-oriented languages. What that means is I can't run a piece of code on demand in GameMaker. The only way to do that is to use user-defined functions or user-defined events, which is a problem because you can't pass data back and forth between them very easily. It just runs like any other event. And you also can't give them a name, so you have to remember user event 0 is whatever, user event 5 is whatever it is. You have to remember the numbers. It's really annoying. So I've added this little helper. So it's called call method, and it does a bunch of stuff, but basically what it means is that if I want an object that has these special functions, these methods, that I can pass data to, get data back from, and name them so that I know what's happening when I call them, all I have to do is make the parent of that object callable. And then in the create event, so when it's created, I just add the methods here. And now what that is I add to the methods, and then I put the method name, and then 0, 1, 2, whatever. And those 0s, 1s, 2s, those are the indexes. So user event 0 will be run whenever add message is called, because it's set to index 0. Now add menu option is set to index 1, so when add menu option is called, it will run user event 1, right? So that makes it easy for me to name them, and then when they're called, it will automatically pass all the data in to this arguments variable. It's an array, which just means multiple values in one name. So I can access argument 0, 1, 2, whatever. In this case, add message only has one argument, which is one piece of data sent to it, which is just the message to add to the display. And so it looks for argument 0. It replaces spaces with double spaces just because the font I'm using, it's hard to see the spaces, so I just double them up. And then I add them to a queue, which means the first thing you put on a queue is the first thing that you take off when you go to read it. So this is just like a line in a store, right? I like the checkout at a store. The first person to get there is the first person that gets checked out. And so this just allows us to store up all the messages, but then we don't have to actually read what the messages are until the user finishes reading the last message and presses enter, right? So that's pretty much it. And then we have return value. So like I said, you can't get data back from an event. So this fake method system that I'm using, that I created to call methods, in addition to providing arguments, it also takes the return value from this return value variable when this is finished. So it doesn't stop the code like regular returning does, but if you want to do that, you can just add exit right after. But when it's finished running, it will take this return value and it'll actually return it from the call method function. So for those of you who aren't programmers, that might have been a little confusing. For those of you who are, maybe not. But basically, it just makes it a lot easier for me to have custom events, basically, instead of only using what GameMaker provides. So yeah, so like I said, this has a queue, and the queue has all of the text, all the messages to display. Then it has a message variable, which is the current message, and then it has menu options. Now, menu options is an array, but it starts out undefined, which is like null or no value or none, whatever. It just means that there is no value for it, because by default, this battle menu will only be drawing dialogue. If you want it to do a map, or not a map, if you want it to do a menu, you just provide menu options in here. And it has a method for doing that, add menu option. And what that does is it So it sees how many menu options are already on the list, and if the menu was not defined, so if it wasn't a menu yet, that would be 0. And then it adds to the end of it 2 array elements, one of which is argument 0, which is the label, so it's the text to show, and the other is an ID, which is the value that gets passed along when you select the option. And the reason for that is because, let's say I'm making a menu that has all the moves that a Pokemon learns, right? Or the 4 moves that they have learned, and I choose a move. If all I have is the text, then it might not be easy to figure out which move they've chosen. Because, for example, the text of the move names can change. So if you look at Ancient Power, for example, in older games of Pokemon, Ancient Power was 1 word, no space. In newer games, they fixed that and they made it 2 words. So if I were to make a change like that in the game and like change something from 1 word to 2 words, the text on the label would no longer match up, right? And so looking it up from the text would break. So instead, I give everything an ID. That way, when you press the button, it passes the button ID, and that'll be like the ID of a move, and that'll allow it to not change. So I can change the text all I want, but the ID will stay the same, and so I can not worry about that breaking. So yeah. And then when you add a menu option, it sets the chosen option back to 0 just because it's still building the menu. So whatever, I figure if it's still building the menu, it should reset your options. It's not a big deal. And don't worry about this. That is no longer necessary. That was debugging. Yeah. So that's that. And then when it draws, if the menu options are not undefined, then you draw the battle menu. Otherwise, so the menu options are undefined, so this part is false, and it says or message is not blank. So that means the message is not blank, so then you're trying to draw something, so then you draw the dialogue. The 0 here is the frame style. Right now there's only 1 frame style, so I'm just going with 0. In the future, like most Pokemon games, you'll be able to choose your frame style, and then it'll just replace that 0 with whatever frame style you chose, 1, 2, or 3. Those are based on this. So this is the only frame style we have. In the future, I'll just be adding frames to this image. And so like 1 might be a blue frame, 2 might be a grassy frame, whatever. I don't know what the graphics are going to be yet. But that's that. So yeah. And then this just handles pressing buttons, so up, down, left, and right to move the indicator on the menu, and enter to choose an option, and also to control the display of the text. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I've gotten here. We got some handlers, and we've got this settings object that's going to hold all of the settings that you've chosen. Right now it has the text speeds and a method to set the speed, and then there's a little helper that converts these values to numbers, because in GameMaker, when you use an enumerator, which is just like a list of keywords basically, it will only allow you to set their values to integers. And in this case, we want the text speeds to be something like 0.25. So a quarter of a character per second, or 1 character every 4 seconds. For slow, a half for normal, and 1 for fast. Or it should be every frame of the game, every step. So 30 times a second. Anyway, the point is, we want these to be decimals, and we can't have enumerators with decimals in GameMaker, so we just have this little helper function that converts them just by doing a bit of math. So the values slow, normal, and fast are 0, 1, and 2. So we just do some math to convert 0, 1, and 2 to 0.25, 0.5, and 1 using this. It's just a quadratic equation. Anyway, just math. And then to set the text speed, we just do the same thing, and then we return the text speed. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. We've got some resource loaders. This will just initialize the fonts, and then later on it'll load in any graphics that are external. And then a tick later, it'll go to the next room, because these are all handled in a special room or level, which loads up first before anything else. And so it'll do all of the initializations and loading, and then it'll actually go to the game rooms. So yeah. And then we've got the keyboard handler, which right now only handles you when you press escape. It ends the game and closes the window out. So yeah, pretty simple. So that's that. So now I want to talk to you about more of the design of this game. So things that I've planned ahead on that I haven't implemented yet that you guys are going to implement with me, or I guess watch me implement in this series. But you're also going to be able to help with art and music and resources like that that aren't programming that you guys might be better at than me. And if it's art, you're definitely better at it than me, because I'm not an artist. Every game that I've ever made on my own has been basic geometric shapes, squares, triangles, circles, because that's about all I can do. So yeah, that's why I really need your help, because a Pokemon game without Pokemon graphics, or just, it just wouldn't be that good. And if I just steal all the real Pokemon graphics, then I might as well just be stealing from Pokemon, and I don't want to do that. I want it to be original. So yeah, this is where you guys come in. But anyway, so we've got the story, the cutscenes, and the map formats is just sort of reference for how I'm going to be setting up all the data inside the game, and also for custom Pokemon that I can add later. I wanted to make it modular so that I can add Pokemon without having to reprogram every individual Pokemon, right? So I have some formats there. But anyway, I'm going to start with the story. Probably taken way too long before I got here. I probably should have done this first, but this is the story. So in the Gemini region, which is a new region like Unova or Kanto or Johto, the Gemini region is often called the Twin Tropics, and there are 2 major islands, Castor Island and Pollux Island. The Twin Tropics thing, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep, because then it feels a bit like Alola, but I might keep it anyway, because this game is not about the location. Yes, it's on 2 islands, but this game is about duality. So it's called Pokemon Gemini because Gemini represents duality, or twins, yin and yang kind of thing. So there's going to be a major theme throughout this game where duality is represented, so complete opposite ends of various aspects of the world. So the region's culture is such that one island, whichever is the opposite of the game's name, so if you're playing Pokemon Castor, then it's Pollux Island. If you're playing Pokemon Pollux, then it's Castor Island. That is reserved for only the strongest trainers, and weaker trainers, or non-trainers, and children who have yet to become trainers are forced to live on the other island that you start at, which is poor. The starting island is poor and rural, so it's like you're on the countryside, but most people live in poverty. So it's run down. It's not a good place to live, basically. And the other island is high class. It's advanced, technological, rich, and everyone there is pretty much advantaged. So if you live on the rich island, then you're pretty much well off and you're good. You have a luxurious life. If you live on the poor island, you live in poverty and struggle to survive. So that's the first duality, and kind of the main duality of the game is rich versus poor, wealthy versus disadvantaged. So yeah, the high class island, if you live there, you're in luxury, and if you live on the poor island, then you're struggling to survive. And you start out in the poor island, which is the one, whichever your game name is. So if you're playing Pokemon Castor, you'll start out in Castor Island, which is the poor island. If you're playing Pokemon Pollux, you'll start out on Pollux Island, which is the poor island. So yeah. And I'm just going to call them Rich Island and Poor Island from now on. It'll be easier. But just know they're called Castor and Pollux Island. But yeah. So the thing is that, like I said, the government forces non-trainers or weak trainers to live on the poor island. However, they offer anyone a place on the better island if you can prove you're strong enough to be there. So you have to prove that you're a worthy trainer in order to get to live on Rich Island and be rich or at least well off. Otherwise, you're screwed. And so I don't know if I mentioned it in here. No. So the way you do that, and the way you prove yourself to the government, is by completing a proof of aptitude, or just a proof for short. And so this is kind of going to be like this game's version of the Pokemon League. So rather than going to different gyms and competing for badges, you go to what's called proof points, which are effectively gyms, and you defeat the proctors there. And the proctors are gym leaders. And if you can defeat them, they give you some kind of, not really a badge, but I guess I would call it like a proof certificate or something like that. Proof papers. I don't know what I'm going to call them. But basically they give you something saying that, yes, you're certified good enough to beat this proof point, and you can go on to the next one. And what I want this game to be is a little different from other games. If I can figure out a balanced way to do it, I want you to be able to take on the proof points in any order. So in every Pokemon game, there's a certain order you have to go through the challenges. I want this to be a little more non-linear, so you can choose which ones you want to take on first. I don't know how I'm going to do that and make it balanced. I have a couple of ideas, but they're not 100% worked out yet, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but let's continue with the story. So you're a young child, and your single mother is ill. You can't afford the medicine that she needs, and neither can she, because you're poor. So you decide you're going to prove yourself worthy of Rich Island and complete your proof. That way you can take your mother and go and live on Rich Island and get her the treatment she needs before it's too late. So before she passes away. So this is a darker game than most Pokemon games. A lot of Pokemon games are sort of marketed towards children. This one is not so much. It's still going to have some lighthearted moments, some elements to it that are kind of, it's still a game. It's still going to be fun. But the story is a little darker. So in this case, you're literally trying to save your mother's life by proving yourself worthy of getting to an island where you can actually afford treatment for her. So yeah, the first half of the game is mostly on Poor Island as you work your way through Gemini's proof points. Oh, I did mention it. Okay, the gyms. It's mostly focused on the story of beating the gyms and proving yourself for your mom, but every once in a while, there will be hints of corruption in Gemini's government. But you're just a kid, so you can't get involved. That's another key difference between this and other games in the Pokemon series. So in most Pokemon games, there's some evil team, and throughout the game, you find hints of the evil team, or you battle them, and in the end, you beat the evil team. But you're 11 years old, and so somebody actually pointed this out. A Let's Player I watch on YouTube was playing Pokemon and mentioned that, and he made a good point, which is, why is an 11-year-old taking on like organized crime? That would be like an 11-year-old kid fighting against the mob and somehow winning. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense that the adults in the game tell this 11-year-old kid to go fight against the mob. It doesn't make sense. So in this game, it's going to be different. In this game, the first half of the game, you're 11 or 12 or whatever I'm going to make it. You're a kid. And you get hints of the corruption that's going on. You know there's something wrong, but you don't get to actually fight against the corrupt government. You don't get to fight against the evil team. You just hear about it, but you have to focus on beating the proof points and then getting through to Rich Island, right? So when you get to the end of the first half of the game, you travel to Rich Island to take on the 4 Gemini Greats, which is like the Elite Four. So the idea behind the Gemini Greats is there aren't 4 greats. Everyone who's ever completed their proof of aptitude successfully is a Gemini Great. And then they just sort of rotate in and out, and at any given point when somebody wants to take on the Gemini Greats, 4 of them come out to battle. So that's how that works. And if you beat them, you become a Gemini Great, obviously. And I think what I'm going to do, even though here it says that it's you travel to Rich Island to do it, I kind of want this to be the midpoint of the game, and I want that to be represented visually as well. So you're going to have the 2 islands, Poor Island and Rich Island, Castor and Pollux, and between them will be a bridge. And right in the middle of that bridge is where I want the tower to be that you have to go into to battle the Greats. So it'll literally be blocking you off from getting to Rich Island, and you can only go through it if you beat everyone in the tower. So I think that's how I'm going to end up making the story work. I feel like it's a good parallel to the story with the visuals of it and everything. But yeah, so you take on the Gemini Greats, the Elite Four, and then the champion battle is a little different than most Pokemon games. Because this is Gemini and it's a whole big thing of duality, the champions are actually the twins. Now, the twins aren't necessarily actually related. They're not brother and sister, or brothers or sisters, whatever. They're just, the twins is a title for the champion. And these are literally the best Pokemon trainers on Rich Island. So the greatest of the greats. They come together, and your champion battle will be a double battle, which I don't think has ever been done in Pokemon before. I think all the champion battles have been single battles. Champion battle is a double battle with the 2 twins. So, yeah. And then if you win, then you and your family can move to Rich Island. Your mom gets her treatment. You become a Gemini Great. Mom survives because she got the treatment. Everything is good. Happily ever after. If you lose, then obviously you go back to the Pokemon Center and try again. Just like every Pokemon game. But yeah, so everything is good. But the game is not over. So in most Pokemon games, you have the main game, you beat the Elite Four, you beat the champion, and then you go into maybe a little Pokemon, a post-game side story, right? Like the Omega Chapter or whatever. I think it was called Delta Chapter, Omega Chapter, whatever it was called. Yeah. So in this game, that's not the case. In this game, you beat all the proof points, you beat the Greats, you beat the twins, and then the story continues to a second half from there. And this is where the evil team comes in, which is actually the entire government. So the second half of the game begins. It jumps ahead 10 years. So now you're an adult. So let's say you were 11 before, now you're 21. Now it makes sense that you would be involved in something like this and trying to help, right? It makes sense that you're not a little kid trying to fight adults. So, you're an adult, your mother is old, but alive, thank God. Well, thank the Greats. And then, as a Great, you're living a life of luxury on Rich Island. But things aren't as they seem. So, you've been suspicious of the Gemini government for a while. And those hints of corruption that you get from the first half of the game when you were a kid, they come back to haunt you. You can't stop thinking about these things you've heard. And over the past 10 years, you've just heard more and more, inklings that something is not right with the government. And ultimately, you discover the government has been fixing the proof point battles so that political allies get onto Rich Island, even if they're actually not able to beat the proof points. So basically, if the government thinks that you can help them out, then even if you're the worst trainer in the world, you'll still get through the proof points and get to Rich Island And it's sort of like bribing them. It's like, hey, if you can help us out, you get to live this life of luxury, which, you know, doesn't seem so bad, except they're also forcing out the people that are unworthy. So people that they don't like, that they think could be a problem in the island, or, you know, whatever reasons they have, they're all political reasons. And they're fixing the proof point battles so that those people can't get into Rich Island. And that's actually killed people. It's resulted in the deaths of hundreds of people, maybe thousands, who have died in poverty when they could have made it to Rich Island and lived. In other words, they get stuck on Poor Island and don't have the money they need to have food, water, clean water, medical, you pay medical bills, things like that. So they end up dying in poverty just because the government didn't want them in Rich Island. So you realize that this corruption is happening, and you notice that other people who have discovered this corruption have gone missing. In other words, you know, the government has dealt with them in probably unethical ways, right? So you're not happy with this, because remember, you did all of this to save your mother. You're a good person at heart. So when you hear about this, you want to do something about it. So you learn that there's a resistance movement, and you join the resistance and try to fight back. But you're actually still one of the greats. And most of the resistance is on Poor Island, because it's not actually, well, I don't want to say easy, but I guess it's not safe. It's not easy, because if you're a great, you technically work for the government, right? You have to, you know, if they call you to start a battle or to do one of the proof point battles, you have to come, and you're only there because the government lets you be. So you work for the government, but you're also part of a resistance fighting the government. So that gives you, you know, more access to things than the people on Poor Island would have, but it also makes it very dangerous, and you're being watched, right? So as it says here, let's see how I put this. A great resisting the government is bad for the Gemini image. The government is after you, you're after the government, and the conspiracy is afoot, right? So the second half of the game takes place mostly on Rich Island, and it's basically you fighting the evil team, which is the entire government of the region. And yeah, so that's the story. So you can see it's not quite the same as, you know, in many ways it is the same as other Pokemon games, right? So it's got the, you know, analog to gyms and the Elite Four and the champion battle and the evil team, but it also has a more real world, slightly more grown up story behind it, right? It's about life and death. It's about economics and politics in kind of a way, and social order. You know, you have the rich and the poor, you have the good and the bad, or corrupt and not corrupt. You've got life and death. It's all of this duality incorporated into the game. And it's literally represented by two islands, which are high-tech and rural. So, yeah. So that's pretty much it. So what I want for the cutscenes, I don't know all the cutscenes yet, but I have decided on the intro cutscene. You can see I have some music here. The music that I have listed I've gotten from opengameart.org, which is an awesome website where people post art and music and other resources for people to use in games openly and freely, as long as you give credit. So you guys will hear what these sound like once I get to actually implementing this, which will probably be in the next episode. But basically, I found a couple of pieces of music from AVG Vista, and I think they work perfectly to represent kind of upbeat high-tech on Rich Island, and then also kind of melancholy on Poor Island. And by melancholy, I mean it's sad, but it should also be a little bit hopeful, because these people live on Poor Island, and they make the best of what they have. So the idea here for the intro cutscene is it plays the upbeat, happy, technological electronic music, and the camera will just kind of pan over a bird's eye view of Rich Island and kind of have a montage fading in and out of different scenes in the high-tech city. But then there'll be a quick pan over to Poor Island, and it'll be motion blurred, so it'll look like it's just kind of shooting across to the other island. And the music will fade into the melancholy music, Valentine 1. And they'll do a little short montage showing you the Poor Island. And the reason for that is to show the contrast. So you start off with all this high-tech, rich, futuristic-looking cool stuff, all sleek. And then it'll go to what's mostly farmland and dirt roads and rundown buildings and things like that. So it'll show the contrast right away from the start. And then, after the little montage on Poor Island, it'll stop at a hospital, and it'll zoom in, and it'll zoom right through the wall into the hallway, and then it'll pan across the hallway, but it'll be staring at the side at the rooms, and you'll see all of the people in their rooms, all of the patients that are sick or dying. And as it does that, as it goes across the hallway, that's when the logo for the game will show up. The Pokemon Caster or Pokemon Pollux will show up. And then it'll fade out. And when it fades out, the camera will get to the nurse's station. And the music will continue. But you'll get to the nurse's station at the hospital, and the player will be standing in front of the nurse's station. And this is where the first, dialogue in the game starts. So the nurse will say, all visitors must fill out a sign-in form. That's the rules to keep the patient safe, or something to that effect. And so then what's going to happen is this is going to be where you choose your name and gender. But it's going to be integrated into the cutscene. So you're going to have the form, the sign-in form, will fly up from the desk and fill the screen, fill the camera. And that's where you'll enter your name and gender. And then the form will fly back onto the desk when you're done. And this way, it gives the game information about what your player's name and your gender will be, but it also is part of the story because you're signing visitor forms. So yeah. So then the cutscene continues, and it walks, the player will walk into a room, and the camera will jump into the room, and you'll be there with your mother, and your mother is a patient, so she's sick in bed. And then you'll have this conversation. Something along the lines of, don't worry, honey, everything will turn out just fine. And then you say, but how can we afford your medication? Yes, in this game, the player does talk. But how can we afford your medication? And then she'll say, I don't know, but please don't fuss over me. Basically, she's being a mom. She's sick, probably dying, but she doesn't want you to worry because you're just a kid and you're her kid, and she doesn't want you to worry. Then you'll say, you know what, that's it. I'm going to complete my proof of aptitude. I'm going to complete my proof and get us over to Rich Island. They can help you there. And then she's going to say, that's very sweet, darling, but please, really, it'll all be okay. Basically, she doesn't believe you'll be able to do it, or at least not you'll be able to do it on time, and she just doesn't want you to worry. And then you just say, it will be okay, I'll make sure of it. And that's how the cutscene ends. It fades out, and then when it fades back in, you're outside the hospital. And then this is where the game will start. And if you try to go back in, then the nurse will tell you visiting hours are over, just so that you can't go back into the hospital, because there's no need to go in the hospital. Maybe the lobby of the hospital will have a Pokemon Center. I don't know yet. But yeah, and then that's where the game starts. And so that's the first cutscene. And that's how the intro is going to play out. I do need graphics for that. Now all of the camera motion and dialogue and movements and all that I can do myself. That's all coding. I just need the graphics. Yeah. And so then once that cutscene happens, if you try to leave, this guy is going to stop you and he's going to say, oh, you're starting your proof. There's this professor from Rich Island who's giving a speech over at the school right now. If you catch her, then you might be able to ask her some things about it. And then basically every time you try to leave after that, he'll tell you, wait, the lecture's almost over. You should catch her before she leaves. And so it forces you to go to the school. And when you go to the school, there'll be another cutscene where effectively she's just finishing up her lecture, and then everyone leaves, and you can go and talk to her. If you talk to her, she'll tell you all about the whole proof of aptitude system that I just explained in the story. She'll explain it to the player, and then kind of explain how things work. And then she'll say something along the lines of, "Oh, you poor boy, how are you ever gonna even start a proof without a Pokemon of your own? I pity you, or I feel bad for you. So here, you can have one of my I don't know how I'm gonna word it, but basically you can have one of my Pokemon that I don't use anymore. And this is where you'll choose your starters, right? She'll give you an option of 3 of the Pokemon that she doesn't even care about anymore. She's so rich, and she's such a great trainer because she's on Rich Island. She doesn't care about having these. She's giving you a Pokemon. Yeah. And so that's how you get your first Pokemon. And then from then on, you can pass the guy who was stopping you from leaving and start the journey. Into the first, find the first proof point. She might even give you a map there, or someone else might give you a map. I don't know. But yeah, so that's how that's going to work out. And then the rest of the game is way too far in advance to think about right now in terms of story and everything. So, but yeah, and everything will follow the story as I laid out here. Obviously, all of this is very early in development. All of it is subject to change, but that's pretty much how this is going to work. One thing that I wanted to add, and I made this script. I haven't actually gotten a chance to test it. I haven't even, this script works with Pokemon maps, which I haven't even added to the game yet. So this is all just to make sure that I don't forget to do it. But I want there to be a challenge that doesn't exist in other Pokemon games. So in other Pokemon games, all the trainers have Pokemon with set levels. So like if a trainer or a gym leader has a Pokemon at level 30, then that Pokemon is always going to be level 30, no matter what. So if you just train up your Pokemon and grind and get your Pokemon to level 50, you'll just blow through them and it won't be a challenge. I don't want that to be possible in this game. I want there to always be a challenge. So I've come up with this system. I don't know if it's going to only apply to the proof point proctors, or if it's going to apply to every trainer. I think probably just all the trainers that are in proof points. So the proof point proctors, and then also the other trainers that are usually like in the gym before you get to the leader, them as well, but not trainers outside of proof points. So trainers outside of proof points will be the same as always. They'll have the Pokemon they have, then that'll never change. But inside proof points, this code will run for all those trainers. And what this code does is it does a bit of math, and if your Pokemon team is leveled, if the average level of your Pokemon is higher than the average level of their Pokemon, it'll level up their Pokemon automatically. So, for example, let's say your team averages level 50 and their team averages level 30. It'll add 20 levels to all their Pokemon so that you'll have the same average levels. And that way, it basically matches you. And it's only going to move up. It's not going to go down. So if you have like a level 20, an average level 20, they're still going to be average level 30. And, you're not going to do well. So you do have to grind up to be at the right level, but it won't be possible to over level and then just blow through everything without trying, right? So yeah, and I think in the game I might explain this, like if you have a higher level, the trainers might say, "Oh, your Pokemon are pretty strong. I'm going to use my stronger Pokemon," or something like that. I don't know if I'm going to do that or if I'm just going to let it happen. But yeah, because in the game you can only battle them once. Obviously, that's how trainers work. And it's not a breeder, so. But playing the game multiple times, if it shows up to be a different level, I want it to be obvious why. So I might have them say something like, when you enter a proof point, it's a little different from fighting trainers on the street. They will always, they'll choose Pokemon that match your strength or something like that. Anyway, and then, this is the UI. This is just a lot of code that draws the dialog boxes. This one I don't actually need anymore. This one draws any box anywhere. The dialog uses that. It draws the frame around it, basically. And then the battle menu, which draws the dialogue, but with the menu on the side. So yeah. And then this loads the fonts. In this case, I'm using the Pokemon Black and White font, which I found online. So yeah, that's all you really need to know for now. This quick sort custom and basic comparator. Basic comparator I'm going to be changing. I'm not going to be using. But there are going to be times when I want to sort Pokemon, for instance, by different things, like by name, by level, by power, by attack, whatever. And there's no way to do that built into GameMaker, right? So you can sort lists, but it only sorts it by the element itself. So in this case, it would try to sort it based on Pokemon. But what does it mean for one Pokemon to be less than or greater than another Pokemon? It doesn't make sense. And there's no way to tell GameMaker what stat to use, so I just implemented my own quick sort, which I just effectively adapted from the Wikipedia page on it. I didn't feel like writing it myself. Quick sort is a common sorting algorithm, so this just sorts lists, but it allows me to pass in another script that determines how to sort it. So in this case, it's just sorting the elements directly. I could do something like argument 0 level minus argument 1 level, and then it'll sort it by level. I could do power there, whatever I want to sort by. I can just substitute into a script and then use that script in the custom, and it'll sort it by that value. So that allows me to do multiple types of sorting. For example, on your Pokemon list, or to create Pokemon IDs, because these Pokemon, when you add new Pokemon or add moves to the game, I want it to be modular, so that I can just create files for each move and each Pokemon, and then they'll be loaded into the game from those files. So the problem with that is it doesn't have a set order, right? I would have to manually set the ID of each Pokemon and each move in the files, and if I make a mistake, it's going to break everything. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a generator that'll create the files for me, and it'll add a timestamp, which it just says, okay, this is the time that this Pokemon was created, or this is the time this move was created. And when it loads into the game, I'm going to use this quick sort to sort all of the Pokemon and moves by timestamp, and that way they'll get IDs assigned in order of when they were created. And it'll automatically happen, and there's no way that you'll ever get duplicate IDs. So that's what I have now. In the next episode, I'm going to start adding more features, and that's when it gets real fun and interesting. I just wanted to catch you all up, since, like I said, I did start this before I decided to make this YouTube video series. Oh yeah, and then I've got the logo here. You have Castor and Pollux, which are white and black, but also kind of with a little spacey texture, and they both say Gemini in their reflections. And then I've got these characters. See, these logos are temporary, but at least I created these. The Pokemon logo is obviously the Pokemon logo, but the Castor and Gemini and Pollux Gemini, I created myself. They're really simple. They'll probably be changed if somebody provides a better one. So if you guys want to create a logo for the game, a Castor and a Pollux logo, please do so. I welcome better graphics. I always welcome better graphics. Yeah, so then we got the Professor. Again, I just took this off DeviantArt. If you guys want to make a better Professor, you can do that too. These are the sizes, 80 pixels by 80 pixels. It doesn't have to be that size. I can always resize it or adjust whatever else I need to. But if you want to make a Professor, I forgot what I named her. I think Professor... what did I name her? I put it in here. Let's see. Demo controller. Professor Hawthorne. And I named her Professor Hawthorne because it's a tree that represents Gemini. So, perfect. And also, I don't think there's been another Professor Hawthorne in the official games. I know there's been Professor Hawthorne in some of the fan games, but not in the official games. So, this is my version of Professor Hawthorne. Anyway, so, yeah, if you want to make another Professor graphic, please go for it, and let me know. And this is just my attempt at Pokemon. Again, I didn't make this, I took it offline, and it's not for public use, so this will not be in the main game. This is just so that I could test things in that intro cutscene. That's the Professor's Pokemon, but it's just a full animation, so if we look at it, it just bounces and blinks and all that. So, here's what I need from you guys. So I'm going to continue this series and continue programming as much as I can with temporary graphics until I get some real ones from you guys. So let's come in here. Let me see if I can... Okay, so if I go to DeviantArt, here, Google, or DeviantArt, Fakemon back and front. Okay, so there, like that. Alright, if you guys want to make custom Fakemon, these are the images that I'm going to need. It doesn't have to be animated, though if you want to make it animated, that would be amazing. If you don't know how to make animations, you can draw the individual frames and I'll convert them into an animation. That would be great too. But if you want to just do a static graphic that that's not animated, that would be fine too. But what I need are the front image and the back image. So these are what's going to be displayed in the battle. So this is the opponent's Pokemon, where you can see them from the front, and these are your Pokemon that you can see from the back. I don't need anything else. I know in a lot of games they have also the overworld sprites for follow Pokemon. There's not going to be any follow Pokemon in this game. Maybe I might need that if I put some legendary encounters in. I don't know yet, but that's absolutely not necessary. These are the only two views of the Pokemon that I need. So if you want to create Pokemon for this, just make something like this, animated or static. Either one's fine. Just need front and back, and then I can add it to the game. If you want to create, if you want to tell me what the typing is and the stats and the moves and all that, that's great. I'll incorporate that definitely. But don't just tell me like the typing and stuff without the graphics, because I can come up with a million types of Pokemon, designs, but without the graphics, I can't actually put them in the game. So yeah, I need the graphics. In case I haven't said it enough, graphics, please. Any artists out there who want to help, please. Yeah. So that's it for today. Tomorrow, or I shouldn't say tomorrow because I do have to work. So the next episode, I will start working on that intro cutscene maybe, or maybe I'll work on the battle menu a little bit. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start adding new things to this game, and you guys can come with me and watch these videos and watch as the game develops into a full Pokemon Gemini experience. So until next time, you know what? I don't really know how to have an outro for this. So I guess until next time, keep catching them all.